It is 12 degrees out here with a real feel of -2, and it's snowing. This is what I do. I'm heavy thought. I go for a walk. This bitter cold feels like it brings me back down to earth. When I started this venture, this has been building up for really more than 3 years. This whole manifestation and reality change. It boils down to finding who you truly are. It's about reclaiming your power, reclaiming yourself, your identity, and with that, your values and strengths. And with that being said, this is a little bit of a journey here. Stay with me. I believe it's worth it. Been gathering my thoughts for quite a while, and this weekend with the murder of Alex Preddy, the call happened from within. When I woke up with all of these thoughts and words, I had to write them down. I felt this itch before when Renee Good was murdered. There was the inner burning sensation when I heard about Chao Feng-ji, which they claimed was suicide, only to receive a coroner report that his hands and feet were bound behind him on this apparent suicide. It was Lunis Campos, whose death by neck and torso compression from correctional officers. I used to be a correctional officer. I have a taste for what that environment can be like. But I believe even in those dark places, I believe we tried our damnedest to hold on to a shred of humanity. Now we're watching humanity vanish. My take is simple. This is what happens when humans lose their identity. This is what happens when people trade their individual identity for political uniform. Red hats, brown shirts, orange sash, even religious sect for conquests, like the Inquisitors, the Sicarii, the Puritans, and much of what's going on now, a Christian nationalist. And when that happens, the moral guardrails often vanish. I love philosophy, and with it, the history that surrounds it. You can look during these times and see what happens when mass identity theft happens, and people are given a new one. Baruch Spinoza, one of my personal favorite philosophers, was around when the Rampja occurred. It was the disaster year for the Dutch Republic. There were two factions at the time. The statists, led by Johan de Witt, which favored liberty and religious tolerance. And the Orangists, who favor a centralized, strict Calvinist religious conformity. Well, by God, what could go wrong? Well, the Orangist propaganda machine went to work, stripping the DeWitt brothers of their identity as statesmen and fellow citizens. They were caricatured, not as men with different political opinion, no, but as traitors, devils, enemies of the people. That sound familiar? The individual complexity of Johan de Witt was gone, erased. It became a symbol of everything wrong with the nation. Or what would the consequence of that be? Well, when Johan went to receive his brother who was falsely imprisoned after being cleared of trumped up charges, there was a mob lying in wait. A crowd who lost all individuality and was a single, violent entity. They didn't just kill those brothers. No, they didn't. It was an obliteration. They shot, stabbed, and beat the brothers to death. They stripped their bodies naked, hung them from their feet. They weren't done, though. They dismembered them. People bought their fingers and toes as souvenirs. was so bad, some accounts say they roasted and ate other parts of the body. Well, who could do such a thing? They must be criminals. These were your shopkeepers and your fellow citizens. Pieter the shoemaker, who lives across the street from you. Johanna the baker, who baked your child's cake on their birthday. Their individual conscience was replaced with the will of the Orange Party. Spinoza went on to call it Ultima Barbarum, the lowest of barbarians. Now, since everyone is shouting Nazi in brown shirts, it reminds me of another story and a great philosopher, Hannah Arendt. She managed to flee the Holocaust and dedicated her remaining days on understanding how people can become monsters. She went on to cover the trial of Adolf Eichmann, a Nazi logistics organizer. Now, her expectations when she stepped into that room was to find a sadistic man, frothing at the mouth, whose only satiation is more torture, more suffering, and more pain. Instead, she said, "This man is absolutely boring." He spoke in cliches, a rule follower, and stated that death camps were merely a shipping problem. She coined the phrase, the banality of evil. You see, it was not all sociopaths, psychos, and sadistic people on the Nazi side. It was people who stopped thinking for themselves. It were the workers, the law-abiding citizens. And why would you question the morality of the orders, since it is the law? Now, this pendulum, energy vortex of totalitarianism is not just about controlling people. It's the erasure of individual humanity to make it unnecessary, superfluous. And it happens over and over and over again. Socrates, executed by a democracy installed by Sparta, when he stated, "Better to suffer wrong than to do wrong," it cost him his life. There's other philosophers on the other end of this. Thomas Hobbes, who wrote the famous Leviathan, where he said, "We must voluntarily give up our individual rights to a supreme sovereign." If you looked at the cover of his book, the cover of his book is a giant king, and if you look closely, the body is made up of thousands of tiny human beings, the ultimate representation of group mentality. The individual must vanish into the body of the state to ensure its survival. This is why reclaiming your life, your identity matters. It's one of the few things that stands between us and the monsters we can become. This whole coaching thing with a very catchy slogan, "Thank you very much," to me it's more an act of defiance. It's the refusal to vanish into the body of the state. The decision to rediscover your own values, your own voice, your soul, before someone else replaces it for you. On every single one of these cases, this philosopher came to the same conclusion you more than likely have right now. The moment you allow a system to define your worth solely by your utility to the group, atrocities become inevitable.